Welcome to the first lecture of our block, dedicated to the two most fundamental concepts on which the entire discipline of artificial intelligence governance rests. These two concepts are harm and risk. This is the reason and the subject of our direct work every day. Today we will examine what risk and harm are from the perspective of artificial intelligence governance. What types they are and how these concepts are related to each other. What significance they have for artificial intelligence governance. And, as usual, at the end there will be a short test to check your knowledge. Therefore, subscribe, if you have not subscribed yet, so as not to miss the next lesson. Let's begin. And to begin, let's break down what exactly harm and risk are, specifically from the perspective of our discipline, artificial intelligence governance. Understanding their difference and interrelation is the key to everything we will study next. In academic literature and in the practice of AI governance, harm is understood as any negative impact of an artificial intelligence system on the well-being of a person, society, or the environment. This can be both direct damage and indirect consequences. It is important to understand, harm is something that has already happened. It is the past or the present. An autopilot hit a pedestrian due to an error in obstacle classification. This is an accomplished fact, which triggers incident response and compensation procedures. Risk is the likelihood of harm multiplied by the severity of its consequences. That is, in risk analysis, we consider two key points. Likelihood, an assessment of how often and under what conditions an undesirable event can occur. In AI projects, data quality, model stability, and the context of its application are taken into account. Severity is an assessment of the scale and depth of the consequences if the risk materializes. Financial losses, reputational risk, harm to health, or violation of rights and freedoms. Risk is always about the future, about what might happen, and what might not. In the example with the autopilot, it is the possibility that the autopilot will incorrectly recognize an obstacle and cause damage to a person or property. And our actions or inaction as AI governance specialists can directly influence this. Let's examine harm from the perspective of four approaches to its classification. By intent, malicious or accidental. If the harm was the desired result of the actions of the developer or operator of the AI system, it is classified as malicious. For example, a generated voice of a director over the phone causes an accountant to transfer money to malicious actors. If the harm arose as a side effect of the model's operation, it can be considered accidental. For example, an HR bot lowers the rating of women's resumes because it was trained on skewed data. By causality, direct or indirect. Direct harm is when an AI system directly makes a decision that harms a person. For example, an AI system for analyzing X-ray images does not notice an early stage of a tumor in the image. A doctor, trusting the system, misses the diagnosis. The direct harm is the lost time for treatment. Indirect harm arises through a chain of consequences. For example, navigation applications direct thousands of cars to bypass a traffic jam through quiet residential streets. For each driver, this is a benefit, but for the residents of these streets, it turns their yard into a busy highway, creating noise, pollution, and danger. The harm to the residents is not inflicted directly, but as a side effect of optimization for others. By scale of impact, micro or macro, we assess whether one person or a limited group is affected, the micro, or an entire society, industry, ecosystem, the macro. For example, an AI system for proctoring online exams cannot correctly recognize the face of a dark-skinned student due to bias in the data. As a result, the system voids his exam, accusing him of cheating. Harm is done to a specific student and, possibly, to a group of students with a similar skin color. The scale is limited. But here is another example. A network of bots controlled by AI organizes a coordinated campaign to spread disinformation before an election. They create thousands of posts, inciting hostility between social groups and undermining trust in the electoral process. Here, the harm is done not to a specific person, but to the foundations of democratic society as a whole. This is the macro. By time horizon, immediate or long-term, we determine whether the harm appears immediately after the system's decision, immediate, or accumulates and becomes noticeable only after some time, long-term. A self-driving car does not recognize a stop road sign and causes a traffic accident. The harm, damage to property, injuries, occurs immediate after the system's error. Now let's look at the generation of children growing up constantly interacting with AI assistants. They get used to receiving answers instantly and not making an effort to search for information. In 10 to 15 years, we may face a macro problem, a decline in an entire generation's skills of critical thinking, curiosity, and the ability for deep concentration. This harm is not visible immediately, it manifests at the societal level and after a long time. Now let's examine what types of risks exist from the perspective of artificial intelligence governance and regulation. The first level is the most personal, individuals and groups risks. These are threats that directly affect the well-being, rights, and opportunities of specific people. First and foremost, this includes systemic bias. This is the very risk where an algorithm unfairly denies a job, a loan, or parole to representatives of a certain race, gender, or social group. The next category is violation of privacy. The risk that your personal, most sensitive data about health, finances, movements will be collected without your knowledge, used for unintended purposes, or, even worse, stolen. This is a direct threat to your personal security and autonomy. A separate type of risk is the loss of autonomy. For example, a recommendation system determines which news it will show, and the user loses control over the formation of their own opinion. We move up a level, social and organizational risks. Here, the consequences go beyond a single person and affect entire communities or the reputation of companies. The creation of disinformation and deepfakes is a serious problem. This is the risk of using AI to create fake news, videos, or audio that can cause panic in the market, tarnish a political opponent, or simply undermine trust in facts as such. For businesses, on the other hand, reputational risk is paramount. A single news story that your AI discriminates against customers can tarnish a brand image that has been built over decades for years. This is a direct path to losing customers and investor trust. Another type of risk is economic inequality. Automation in one sphere can eliminate jobs in an entire industry, while other spheres will be less affected. The third level is legal risks. In the modern world, ignoring the rules for working with data and artificial intelligence is a direct path to huge financial losses. Violation of specialized laws. We have all heard about the European Data Protection Regulation GDPR, which provides for multi-million euro fines for the improper handling of personal data. And the new law on AI, the AI Act, introduces even stricter requirements for the development and deployment of AI systems. Copyright infringement. A generative model may copy parts of protected texts without a license or create images and sounds protected by copyright. One of the largest copyright infringement lawsuits against ChatGPT is on everyone's lips right now and is being considered by the courts. General liability. Any violation of human rights with the help of AI, whether it is discrimination or surveillance, is increasingly becoming the subject of lawsuits today. Thus, an ethical misstep very quickly turns into a specific legal and financial problem for the company. And finally, the fourth, most global level, systemic risks. These are threats that undermine the very foundations of our technological and social systems. This includes, for example, the carbon footprint. Training giant language models requires a colossal amount of energy. This contradicts the goals of sustainable development and the global climate agenda. Market monopolization. A few large players control 80% of the access to computing power. The huge cost of training foundational models creates prerequisites for the abuse of a unique position by a few players or even countries. But perhaps the most dangerous systemic risk is the erosion of trust. When people stop believing the news, doubt the fairness of decisions, fear that they are constantly being watched. This destroys the social fabric of society. If we lose fundamental trust in digital technologies, the entire industry will suffer, and we will be deprived of the enormous benefits that artificial intelligence could give us. Now that we have sorted out the concepts, let's see how they work in conjunction and when to apply each of the approaches. Risk is a forecast. We assess the likelihood of an adverse scenario occurring and the severity of its consequences. Harm is a fact. The adverse scenario has materialized, and real negative consequences have occurred. Simply put, risk is the probability of causing harm, and harm is a realized risk. Risk management is a proactive approach that is applied before a problem arises, at the stage of system design and testing, or at the stage of a working system, but this is not a best practice. For each new or significantly changed functionality of the system, we conduct a risk assessment. Later in the course, we will study all the theoretical and practical aspects of these processes in detail. The key stages of such an assessment should answer the questions: what scenarios can cause harm? How probable and serious are these scenarios? What preventive measures, technical and organizational, can we implement to reduce the risks? How will we track risk metrics and update the assessment when changes occur? A practical example: before launching a new chatbot, we model a scenario of a personal data leak. We assess its likelihood, for example, by analyzing audit logs, and reduce the risk through encryption and a strict role-based access model. The incident response procedure. This is a reactive approach that is activated as soon as we have recorded the fact of harm being caused. This process includes incident detection, for example, through system alerts or a user complaint, classification, what type of harm has been done, whom and on what scale it has affected, containment and elimination of consequences, immediate stopping of the malicious process, installation of a patch or temporary disabling of a module, communication and support, notifying the affected parties, offering compensation, notifying and reporting to regulators, root cause analysis and updating the risk register. For example, if a recommendation system started promoting extremist content, we immediately disable this functionality, launch an internal investigation, and correct the algorithms and filtering. The risk management process and the incident response procedure are continuously linked. Every recorded incident and case replenishes our knowledge base about risks. The lessons learned allow us to conduct more accurate assessments in the future, to better calibrate models of likelihood and severity of consequences. Thus, the cycle of continuous self-improvement is closed: risk management, implementation of controls, monitoring, recording of harm, extraction of lessons, updating the risk model. Risk management is prevention. Incident response is treatment. Together they create a reliable system of protection that helps to either prevent harm or quickly eliminate its consequences, extracting valuable lessons for the future. Well, now it's time for our traditional test to check the knowledge you've gained. Here are 6 questions for you. Pause the video and try to answer each of them. If any question seems difficult or you feel the need to clarify something, don't hesitate to write in the comments, we will definitely provide an answer. Also, if you enjoyed this lesson and are interested in AI governance, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, you will help others discover the new profession of AI governance. Today we have laid the foundation. We figured out what harm and risk are, how they differ and how they are related. You have learned 2 key approaches, risk management and incident response, and understood how they work together to protect against negative consequences. This is the basis of the entire discipline of AI governance. In the next lesson, we will look in more detail at individual and group types of harm. See you soon.